verse created by or written by Krishnadas Kaviraj. I'll just read the translation. Let me offer my obeisances to Lord Nityananda, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose opulence is wonderful and unlimited. By his will, even a fool can understand his identity. So we may be in the category fool, but let's try to understand his identity by his mercy. There's another great acharya, an author, Jnanachandra Goswami, not so much known in ISKCON these days, but he was a disciple of Gopal Guru, who was a disciple of Bakreshwar Pandit, who was a basic devotee of Lord Chaitanya. And he wrote a book, Gora Govindacharana Smarana Padati. It's a procedure book. And he has a pranam mantra to Lord Nityananda. I offer my humble obeisances unto Sri Nityananda Prabhu, who has a single pearl dangling from one of his ears. He is the elder brother of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the purifier of the earth. In another later section, he has a Smarana Krama, or remembrance, meditation upon Lord Nityananda. Let me always remember that brightly smiling face of Sri Nityananda Prabhu, whose beautiful movement ridicules the graceful gait of an elephant. His cloth resembles a cluster of blue lotus flowers, and his bodily effulgence conquers the splendor of the rising moon at sunset. His prema-saturated rolling eyes defeat the pride of a restless Kanchana bird. In case you don't know what a Kanchana bird is, because I don't know either. It's a wagtail bird. If you don't know what a wagtail bird is, you can look it up. But, you know, they sit on a branch and their tail goes like this. Kanchana bird. One of the celebrated songs that our Gaudiya Vaishnavas sing and we love very much in ISKCON, Nitai Pada Kamala. It's from Narottam Das Thakur's prayers. So, Nitai Pada Kamala. Yeah, of course it's up. So, Pada means feet. Kamala means lotus. Pada Kamala means lotus feet. Nitai's lotus feet are Chandra, are moon-like, but not just one moon, Koti Chandra, millions of moons giving a very cooling and soothing light. That's the opening line of the song. And here's the first verse translated. The lotus feet of Lord Nityananda are a shelter where one will get the soothing moonlight of not only one, but of millions of moons. If the world wants to have real peace, it should take shelter of Lord Nityananda. Unless one takes shelter under the shade of the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda, it will be very difficult for him to approach Radha Krishna. Last night I put it a different color. If one actually wants to enter into the dancing party of Radha Krishna, he must firmly catch hold of the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda. Now here's Prabhupada's restatement in his Bhaktivedanta purport of the 5th chapter of Adi Leela. Anyone desiring to become expert in the service of Radha and Krishna should always aspire to be under the guidance of Swarup Damodar, Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, and Raghunath Das Goswami, which is taken from Manushiksha by Raghunath Das. To come under the protection of the Goswamis, one must get the mercy and the grace of Nityananda Prabhu. So that's what we're here for, right? Not just the prasada. We're here for the mercy of Nityananda. And how merciful? Is there a limit to his mercy? Well, according to Lochan Das Thakur, Nitai Gunamani Amara. Now this isn't a well-known song, but someone very kindly sent me a link to the Alashwa temple, Abhishek, their temple, and Vishwambar Prabhu was singing this song. And if you want to have chills go up your spine, find that link, go listen to Vishwambar singing this song. It's really, really beautiful. His singing is beautiful and the lyrics are beautiful. And Lochan Das Thakur described at the beginning of the song, it is said that Sri Nityananda Prabhu is more merciful, more magnanimous, more munificent than Sriman Gauranga Mahaprabhu. And he's the Mahabhavanaya, and Lord Nityananda is out ahead of him. If you want the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, you get the mercy of Lord Nityananda. And if you get the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, you get the mercy of Srimati Radharani. If you get the mercy of Srimati Radharani, you get the mercy of Krishna. So, how do we get the mercy of Lord Nityananda? Well, we remember him where we come to Nityananda Trayodasi festival and hear about him and glorify him. And we approach the Jaghais and Madhais of the world, because that was the service assigned to him by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So we assist him. And there are a few Jaghais and Madhais around. That's a smaller version, but that's our life. Service in assisting Nityananda Prabhu, which means this Lord Chaitanya Sankirtan movement. And very simple, chant Hare Krishna. So let's go a little bit down the path of Nityananda, some of the points and details of Nityananda Prabhu's life. Here's the archway. Those of you who have been to Ekachakra will recognize the arch. And it's in English, Nityananda Janastan, the birthplace of Lord Nityananda, Ekachakra, one wheel. During the time of Lord Nityananda, Ekachakra was similar to Navadvip. Ekachakra was a seat of higher learning. It was a place where many very elevated brahmanas. Of course, there were other varnas present, but a seat of higher learning. And it was considered a holy place. And it's today considered, because of Nityananda's appearance, but even before his appearance, it was a holy place. In fact, a place where one sannyasi was visiting holy places throughout India, and he visited Ekachakra. We'll hear some about that. And chief, the leader amongst the Brahmanas, the Brahmana community, was Adai Ojha, or Adai Pandit, and his good wife Padmavati. Much like Jagannath Mishra was very learned amongst all the Brahmanas in Navadvip. Here's a photograph of the place where Lord Nityananda took his birth. Garbha As is spoken of as. And inside this sacred place is a deity of Lord Nityananda. Now, in many cases, we see Lord Nityananda dressed in blue. Here he's dressed in gold. And this is his birthplace, the appearance place of Lord Nityananda Ram. To the left of this Garbhavas is where the temple is. And inside the temple, there's deities, a little different configuration that we're used to, but their positioning is what we're used to. Lord Chaitanya is on the far right. I'm just looking at the photograph on the left side. There's Lord Chaitanya, in the middle is Lord Nityananda, and then Advaita, the Sri Vishnu type of forms of the Panchatattva. And some devotees here may be very expert in the mudras, the positions of the hands of the deities, each of the deities' hands signifying something. And I'm not so knowledgeable in that, so don't ask me. But there's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with his right arm raised, offering benedictions. And I'm sure they're all offering benedictions in one mood or another of offering benediction because they're very merciful. And on the right side says the deity of Lord Nityananda with his arms outstretched and his palms upright, inviting us to come to his shelter. There's the same deities in a different day, in a different outfit. Hadai Pandit was a Brahmana. Nityananda was and therefore born in a Brahmana family. And he was very playful, young boy, very intelligent, very good mannered, very respectful to all the elders. And the outstanding feature is there's a long section, very long section in chapter 9 of Chaitanya Bhagavat Adi Lila, Adi Khanda, describing what he would do as a young boy. And in short, it's hard to be short about something like this because it's so nice. In short, he enacted pastimes with his friends. He was the costume designer. He gave the script. He did the orchestration. He was the lead actor. He was the leader amongst all his friends, whatever their ages were. And again and again and again and again, various pastimes of Krishna. Sometimes he would take the role of Krishna, sometimes he would take the role of Balaram. But all the pastimes of Krishna, everything. The killing of Putana, lifting of Govardhan Hill, Trinavarta demon, and how he enacted it was created. Dancing on the hoods of the Kaliya serpent, everything. There's details and details in Chaitanya Bhagavat because Chaitanya Bhagavat's author, we're going to mention something about him shortly, but Vrindavan Thakur was the son of Narayani, and Narayani was the niece of Malini and Srivas Pandit. So Narayani from her early childhood received mercy, and her son, Vrindavan Das, became the chief biographer of Lord Chaitanya's life. And the style of Vrindavan Das Thakur's writing, I liken it to is just spontaneous outpourings of love. And if people don't understand, he doesn't mind at all. He does outpourings and explosions of loving expressions. Different than Krishnadas Kaviraj, also has love, but supports what he says by scripture. And then more scripture and more scripture and more scripture. Vrindavan Das just expresses himself spontaneously. And his description of the childhood pastimes of Nitai is really amazing. This particular illustration is indicating the pastime in Ramchandra's Leela, because he also knew Ramchandra's Leela because he took part in Ramchandra's Leela as Lakshmana. As he took part in Krishna's pastimes as Balaram. So there's a very lengthy description of the pastime where he orchestrated that Lakshman would be hit by the lance or the Shakti Shela weapon of Ravana. And he told the boys what to do. When he gets hit by the Shakti Shela weapon, he would fall on the ground and they should gather around him and start to cry and call out loudly. So the boy who was playing the part of Ravana had a flower with a real long stem. He threw the flower with a real long stem and it hit Lakshmana in the chest and he fell to the ground unconscious. There was no symptom of consciousness. It wasn't just a drama. There was no symptom of consciousness. And the boys tried to awaken him and he wouldn't awaken. And so they started crying very loudly. They were crying so loudly the parents heard. The parents came and they saw him lying on the ground as if dead. They got doctors, this doctor, that doctor, they couldn't revive him. They were crying and crying and crying. And then, this is right in Chaitanya Bhagavad, and then one boy remembered, oh, he told us he would do this. And when he was hit by the Shakti Shela weapon, we should gather around him and cry loudly. And then Hanuman over there, he was to be sent to go get some medicine, some herbs from the mountain over there. And so Hanuman said, oh yeah. And so off he went. And when he got to halfway there was a Brahmana waiting to greet him. And the Brahmana said, oh, Hanuman, you've come such a distance. Please let me offer you some respect. Please take some food. And before you take food, please take bath quickly in the lake over there. So he went to take bath in the lake over there. And a crocodile, boy is a crocodile, came and grabbed him by the leg. And there was a big fight. And of course, Hanuman won. And then Hanuman went back to where the Brahmana was, and it wasn't a Brahmana anymore, it was a Rakshasa. And the Rakshasa said, I'm going to eat you. And he attacked Hanuman. It was a big fight. You always like fights. And Hanuman won. So Hanuman went further to a big mountain. And when he got there, there were Gandharvas, many boys waiting for him. And there was a big fight with the Gandharvas, and he defeated the Gandharvas, and he brought back the mountain, and took some leaves that were the herbs, magic herbs, placed them underneath the nose of Lakshmana or Nitai. And he opened his eyes, looked up and smiled. And everyone was very jubilant. They were so happy because they didn't know what maybe he's dead. No sign of life. Now he's alive. And day after day, all hours of the day, young boys like to play like that. They asked Nitai, Nimai, Nitai. They asked Nitai, where did you learn all these stories? And he gave the truth. These are my pastimes. And little children can say things like that and nobody pays much attention. By his yogamaya, he concealed his true identity and enjoyed his own pastimes to no limit. And the young boys, like the cowherd boys in Vrindavan with Krishna and Balaram, they were totally attached to Krishna, totally attached to Nitai. Near his home was a small tributary of the Jamuna River, one day when bathing and swimming, he found a deity of Krishna in the river. How nice. And he then brought the deity to his home and began worshiping the deity. The deity was given the name Banka Rai. Banka meaning he, like you see his head held tilted like this. He was bent or crooked. And later by his side was Radharani and Lalita. It is said that just as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu entered the body of the deity of Tota Gopinath, Lord Nityananda ended his pastime by entering into the body of this deity. We had this discussion in Grand Rapids, no samadhi for Lord Chaitanya, no place of his birth, but the place of his disappearance is the deity. So that deity later became worshipped by his son, Nirvadra, and is still being worshipped to this day in Ekachakra, just across the street from where Lord Nityananda was born. That area is known as Kadam Kandi, and in that same area there's this nice little temple, very small temple. Now there's a version, there's two versions, but in Chaitanya Bhagavat, the version is that he was 12 years old when this Brahmana sannyasi came, that's this illustration here, and he came to the holy places of India, he came to Ekachakra, and when he came to Ekachakra, immediately he was brought into the presence of Hadai Pandit because he was the leading Brahmana in the whole community. And the details of how he was received as one receives a sannyasi, all those details were observed properly by Hadai Pandit. And after bathing and feeding and resting and discussing Harikatha together all night long, they spent the whole night just discussing Harikatha. And naturally, as a Brahmana Grahastha will do, he requested the sannyasi, is there some service I can do for you? And the sannyasi said, well, as a matter of fact, I'm traveling to the holy places alone. I'd like to have an assistant. Please give your son. It's like Vishwamitra Muni asking for Ram. And Dasarath was. So Hadai Pandit couldn't say no, and he didn't want to say yes. And his distressed wife was, what to do. In the end, he went with the sannyasi, and it was a devastating experience for his mother and father, but not just by material attachment, by transcendental attachment. Transcendental attachment may look worldly like material attachment, they're not. And this is the description found in Chaitanya Bhagavat and also in Bhakti Ratnakar, is they watched as the sannyasi and Nitai walked down the street, down the roadway, the path, until they could no longer see them and fainted on the ground. It is said they couldn't eat, they couldn't sleep, they became very weak, they left their body in separation after 1 year. And not only they left, but when the time left, the whole place vacated because people couldn't bear seeing the place where Nitai had been without Nitai. So off they went to various holy places. One of the holy places they went to was Pandharpur, and some of you have been to Pandharpur, maybe some of you from Pandharpur. Very wonderful deity, very, very merciful deity. And In Pandharpur is where he met Lakshmipati Tirtha, according to Chaitanya Bhagavat. This is where he received Diksha from Lakshmipati Tirtha, who was also the guru of Madhavendra Puri. And after some time leaving Pandharpur, he went to a place where Madhavendra Puri was, and they had transcendental exchanges for a number of days. Nityananda then continued in his travels, visiting holy places. It's a long section describing where he went, all the places and places and places are listed. He ended up spending substantial time in Vrindavan. This is a photograph of the place. Many of you have been to Vrindavan, I'm sure. It's near Imlital. And if you go from Imlital, well, the flow of the river Jamuna was closer than today. Now it's not so far away. But if you look towards the Jamuna from Imlital and make a left, that's where this Nityananda Vat. You see in the courtyard, there's the stump of an oak tree. That's Nityananda Vat. And it's no longer a full tree. There's another tree behind it of the same species. And up there in that little set of steps is a little temple where Nityananda would sit beneath the Nityananda Vat. Place is also known locally as Sringar Vat. He also spent time, Nityananda Prabhu, spent time at Radhakund. This is the sitting place of Lord Nityananda at Radhakund. And in Prabhupada's voice is very strong. That song you mentioned earlier. And notice the photograph behind that chadar is the photograph of the deity of Lord Nityananda in his birthplace. Now please remember the chronology. Nityananda visited Vrindavan before Lord Chaitanya came to Vrindavan. When Lord Chaitanya came to Vrindavan, we hear that he discovered Radhakund, but it was discovered before he discovered it by Lord Nityananda, because it's their place of pastime, so they certainly know where the places are. He sat at this place and engaged in his spiritual devotional activities, and he was simply waiting for that time when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would begin his pastimes as a devotee, because in the early stages of Mahaprabhu's pastimes, he was not a devotee, but a super scholar. Without going into all of that, when he became initiated devotee of in the line of Madhavendra Puri, Ishwar Puri became his guru. His devotional life flared, burst open, ecstatic love of God immediately became manifest. And that's when Nityananda left, and then together they met one another in Navadvip. So just a chronology, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was 20 at that time. And Nityananda Prabhu left ISKCON when he was 12, so he was around 32. Lord Chaitanya was around 20 years of age when they first met. And it's a wonderful section of Chaitanya Bhagavat. Very wonderful, because it's naturally it's really wonderful. They're eternally associated, but they hadn't been together. Then they come together. So it's a very wonderful exchange. And naturally, Sankirtan. The Sankirtan pastimes unfolded. Lord Nityananda is center stage with Lord Chaitanya. And in this particular painting, that white bearded Vaishnava is Vaitacharya. there's the mood of Lord Nityananda during the time that he was in Navadvip was that of a transcendental madman. And the Avaduta, transcendental madman, not the other kind. And he had a particular relationship with Malini. Malini was the wife of Srivas Thakur, Srivas Pandit. And he behaved like a little boy. She would cook for him, and he would sit and look at the food and wait for her to feed him. He's in his 30s. Would eat by himself. That was his relationship with her. So, with her own hand, she cooked and fed Nityananda. Malini in Krishna Lila is one of the nurses that assisted Mother Yasoda in feeding Krishna and Balaram. Ambika was her name, and that was Malini. Malini's daughter was the sister of Ambika. Malini's daughter became Narayani, was her daughter. She became the mother of Vrindavan Das Thakur. So you see in the little drawing here, there's a crow on the windowsill. See on the right? So there's a pastime that's described where Malini, one of her services, was preparing the deity worship paraphernalia for her husband, so he could do his puja nicely. And one day the crow didn't just stop on the windowsill. The crow flew into the room, picked up a cup filled with water, small cup, like an ashram cup, and flew out the window. And Malini was in great distress because this is her service to prepare the deity worship paraphernalia. And somehow, by neglect or oversight or circumstance, somehow how was her husband going to complete his deity worship? So she began crying in great despair. Lord Nityananda heard her crying, asked her what the problem was. She explained. And he told her, I'll bring the cup back. And he ordered the crow right there in front of her, bring the cup back. I don't know what language he used. And in the window came the crow and set down the cup. Doesn't say he paid his obeisances. And then flew out the window. And Malini understood his divinity. Not that she didn't. This is transcendental exchange. But a wonderful pastime where Lord Nityananda is on the one hand demonstrating his divinity, on the other hand, not eating unless Malini put it in his mouth. He was very extraordinary behavior in many ways, many other ways. Very important for our Hare Krishna movement is this pastime. And because of time, I'm not going to go into the whole length of the pastime. The whole pastime can take a whole evening in itself. But he, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, requested both Nityananda and Haridas to go into the public, go door to door, and simply ask people to chant Krishna, worship Krishna, remember Krishna, don't speak anything else. And so this was their order. And so every day they go out together. Imagine Haridas and Nityananda meeting them somewhere. And they were engaging people in Navadvip in the chanting of the holy name. Now, one day, fast forward and shortened this wonderful Leela, they came across Jagai Madhan, two Brahmanas who by bad association had become very degraded, drunken, thieves, plunderers, wild men, pulling each other's hair, bashing people, wild, wild. And Nityananda thought, great. This is a perfect, they had a reputation of being very dangerous, very wild people, fallen, sinful to the max. If Lord Chaitanya made these two devotees, then his name would be known everywhere. Let's go. I mean, there's details, I'm going to stick to details. But the second time they approached the two, asking them to chant the holy name Krishna, one of the brothers picked up a clay pot, threw it at full force, and hit Nityananda in the head. Look closely at the painting, you see blood on his forehead. And what did Nityananda do? That's all right, just chant Hare Krishna. What did Lord Chaitanya do? He heard, he understood, and he came ready with his arm raised. You see his right arm raised. The other painting was his arm raised giving benediction. This is arm raised, he's got Chudshan chakra at the tip of his finger, ready to chop Jagai Madhai. And when they saw that, look at the expression. But Lord Nityananda stopped him because Lord Chaitanya can't bear that the devotees are insulted or harmed or put in difficulty. So he was ready to protect. And Lord Nityananda protested, no, no, no. In this incarnation, you don't kill the demons. You deliver the demons. Please deliver them. Whoops, what happened? What happened? What happened? Okay, there we go. Something happened. So, you know the story. They were delivered. They were asked, they fell at Lord Nityananda's feet. He was very forgiving of their offense. Lord Chaitanya said, I accept you as my devotees, but one request, never do these sinful things again. And to the people who are gathered around, never see them according to their past activities. They are now Vaishnavas and they should be respected as Vaishnavas. The principle just spoken is how we should conduct ourselves. That's our Vaishnava etiquette standard for preaching Krishna consciousness. Now, after some time, Lord Chaitanya informed Nityananda that he was going to take sannyas. We know who is Nityananda. He's looking very sad because it means their pastimes in Navadvip are going to end. And they were ecstatic. All the associates of Navadvip. But he couldn't say no because he just wants to serve Lord Chaitanya. So together, Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda went to inform another dear associate of Lord Chaitanya, Gauridas Pandit. Some of you have been to ISKCON, and you know the place. This is the entrance. Inside the entrance is a courtyard, and to the right of the courtyard is an altar, and on the altar are deities of Gauratai. These deities of Gauratai were the first deities of Gauratai to be worshipped in the world. And the circumstance, and I can hear the noise in the hall, so I'm going to go fast. I like to go slow because it's sweet. Gauridas had a particular relationship with Lord Chaitanya. When Lord Chaitanya informed of his plan, he said, you can't do this. Was it like ordering? I won't be able to maintain my life, and everyone will lose their life. You can't do this. You can't take sannyas. Lord Chaitanya smiled. Said, I know that you're very attached to me, so I'll provide you with a set of deities. The deities were provided, and he said, when you worship these deities, you'll see me. So we're going to go now. So they started to walk out the courtyard to the gate. And as he was walking, he and Lord Nityananda were walking toward the gate. He was told, well, if you're not different than the deity, then you stay, let the deities go. So Lord Chaitanya smiled and said, all right, very well. And they took the place of the deities. The deities got up and started walking out the courtyard and out the front gate. I said, no, 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 no. They can stay and you can go. And back and forth like that several times. It's nice to tell the story in detail, but he then realized they are not different. And to this day, they don't leave the deity. It's like Bhakti Vihari in Vrindavan. They open the curtain very quickly, but they don't keep them open very long. There's another pastime which has to do with keeping the curtain only open for a short while. But Gauridas Pandit, note right after his name here on the slide, he had a brother. And the brother of Gauridas was Suryadas. Now, Pandit is just a title because he was a scholar. And Sarankale is also a title because of the service that he had with the government. But they're brothers. And Suryadas Sarankale later became the father-in-law of Lord Nityananda. His daughters married Lord Nityananda. There's another photograph of the same deities, same positions of their hands, a nice little turban on their head, and similarly, same deities. Some people call them Gauritai deities. Very tall and very powerful, very versatile deities. In time, Lord Chaitanya took sannyas. The sannyas took place at Katwa. Lord Nityananda was also there, as you see at the bottom, along with just a handful of others. And Kesava Bharati, his sannyas guru. So in Katwa, it's another very nice place. It's small, but it's surcharged, spiritual place. Not so far from Navadvip, not so completely close, but not so far. And there at the bottom, you see Madhu the barber. It's like a celebrated pastime when the beautiful hair of Lord Nityananda, Lord Chaitanya, was shaved by the barber. And like he couldn't do it, it took him all day. It was, anyway, there's a samadhi in Katwa of the barber. There's a samadhi in Katwa of the hair of Lord Chaitanya. And of course, the samadhi of Kesava Bharati. So after his taking of sannyas, he wanted to go to Vrindavan. Lord Nityananda tricked him. Instead of going to Vrindavan, they went to Shantipur. And in Shantipur, Mother Sachi came and many other associates of Lord Chaitanya because they weren't going to see him again for a long, long time. And Sachi asked him to go to Jagannath Puri instead of Vrindavan, because the devotees from Bengal annually go to Puri for Rath Yatra, and she would get some news of them this way. So we went to Puri, and many things happened in their pastimes in Puri. And each year, the devotees from Bengal would come to Puri and join Lord Chaitanya for Rath Yatra, stay for the rainy seasons, then go back. One of those years, early, Lord Chaitanya met with Lord Nityananda privately and made a request, made two requests. One request is, my mother wanted me to stay here, so I'm stuck, not stuck, but I'm here in Puri. But I came in this world to spread the holy name, so you please assist me. Travel throughout the land. I'll give you some associates who are like you. They're madmen like you. Transcendental madmen. And they will assist you in propagating these chanting of the holy name. And so he did. He didn't come back. And one other thing, he said, I want to see you get married. And there's a nice exchange. I mean, all these are nice exchanges. We're just touching the topics. Nityananda was very sad. You're is this your chief associates, the renunciates, and you want me to get married? What does this mean? I just see you that way. There's pastimes for him. And so sure enough, Lord Nityananda returned back to Bengal, and after some time, he visited the house of Suryadas Sarakeo, which is not far from Goridas Pandit's home. And he was received very nicely by Suryadas, who had great devotion for Lord Nityananda. And while feeding him, Janava, the daughter, one of the daughters of Suryadas, was serving the meal. And he informed Suryadas afterwards, I'd like to marry your daughter. They're eternal associates, just a pastime. And Suryadas was happy and concerned at the same time because he's a bad man. How's he going to maintain a wife? So he didn't say yes and he didn't say no. And some bad things started to happen, and he understood the bad things are happening because we should say yes. So he said yes. You can marry my daughter. Then there's another detail where in their time together, the second daughter, Vasudha, was the second daughter of Suryadas, was serving the meal. And as she was serving to Lord Nityananda and others, her sari started to slip while she was serving the meal. So she manifested 2 extra arms and maintained her sari in place. He turned to Suryadas and said, I want to marry her too. And so they married. And it was a grand, big event in Ambika. And they eventually ended up residing in Kardaha. Here's a murti of Suryadas and his 2 daughters. And the girls look pretty small. He looked pretty big. But it's just a place where they're being worshipped. And the sitting place where Nityananda and his wife sat after the wedding is this tree. Underneath this tree is a very celebrated place. And you see just to the left, there's a little shrine. And there's a sign above the shrine that says what is. Inside, there's the imprint of Lord Nityananda's lotus feet. Now I'm going to continue going quickly because times this keeps moving. One of the essential services that Lord Nityananda performed, along with all the other things mentioned, is he granted benedictions upon very important Vaishnavas. Next weekend, if everything goes as planned, next weekend we'll be discussing the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. And I'm really looking forward to it. I hope you are too. One of them is Jiva Goswami. When Jiva Goswami went to see the places of Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, Nityananda was there. He took him around to all places. The very wonderful description written by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And among other things, he granted him residence in Vrindavan. He granted him residence in Vrindavan. Go to where your 2 uncles are and make your residence there and take shelter of them. They will train you and guide you. Many other things were done and said. As you see in the background, the Adbhuta Mandir was being described by Lord Nityananda. Another person who we'll hear some more about next weekend is Raghunath Das Goswami, being more than eager, transcendentally enthusiastic to get Lord Chaitanya's association, but obstacle after obstacle after obstacle, until Lord Nityananda, placing his foot on his head, gave him the benediction that he would be soon in Lord Chaitanya's association in Puri, which is what he wanted. But there are obstacles that were preventing him. We'll hear some of those details next weekend. But the function of Lord Nityananda is to grant benedictions. We should be eager for his benediction. We know what to ask for, right? Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami similarly was granted residence in Vrindavan by none other than Lord Nityananda. And we'll also hear some more of this next weekend. We're doing the gloss. It's a function that we should be eager for also. And he, according to one very nice song by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he gives the pure holy name in the marketplace of the holy name. Namahata, being the marketplace of the holy name. The song specifically uses a language where Lord Chaitanya gave him a franchise to conduct a business. The business was the holy name, giving the holy name, but you have to charge a fair price. You can't just give it away. And the fair price, faith, you can give it away. That's the proper price. So there's the two lords performing their pastimes and concluding. Hopefully you have already received a PDF that was sent out that has the words for Nityanandastakam by Sri Vrindavan Thakur. And if you have it, you want to look at it. If you don't look at it, you can see it on the screen. There's a nice devotee singing these ashtakas. And I hope the technology works. Sarachandra Prantim Spuradamakantim Gajagatim Hari Premon Mattam Jata Paramasatvam Smitamukham Sada Ghuram Netram Karakalita Vetram Kalibidam Bhaje Nityanandam Bhajanatarkandam Niravadhi Rasanamagaram Svajanagana Sarvasnamadumam Tadiyeka Prana Pramita Vasudha Janavapadim Sada Premonmadam Paramaviditam Mandamanasam Bhaje Nityanandam Bhajanadharkandam Niravadhi Shashi Sunu Preshtam Nikhila Jagadishtam Sukhamayam Kalau Majjadjivo Dharana Karano Dhamma Karunam Hare Rakhyana Bhavajanadhikaramo Natiharam Bhaje Nityanandam Bhajanatarkandam Niravadhi Hare Bhadaranam Kaligalushinam Kim Bhavidam Tatha Prayashchittam Rajaya Yadanaya Sataime Vrajante Tvamitham Saha Bhagavatam Trayati
Bhaje Nityanandam Bhajanatarukantam Niravadhi Yatheshtam Bhaga Guru Hari Haridhani Manisam Tato Vasamsara Dhikaranadayo Mayavage Idam Bahuspodair Adatiratayam Yapratigriham Bhaje Nityanandam Bhajanatarukantam Niravadhi Bhavat samsaramho nidhikaranakumbho bhamaho Sadam shreyasindhu nadigudabandhu samuditam Khalashmi spurya divyahara surya prabhamaham Bhaje Nityanandam Bhajanatarukantam Niravadhi Natantam Gayantam Harimanubadantam Pati Pati Brajantam Pashyantam Swaminadayantam Janaganam Pragurvantam Santam Sakarnadrigantam Prakavanat Bhaje Nityanandam Bhajanatarukantam Niravadhi Subhikhanam Bhadu Karasarasijam Komataram Mitho Bhakramo Kochalita Paramananda Hridayam Namantam Madhuryair Ahavadayantam Purajanan Bhaje Nityanandam Bhajanatarukantam Niravadhi Rasanamaharam Rasikavalasam Vaishnavadhanam Rasagaram Saram Paditapatitaram Smaranam Param Nityananda Ashtakamitam Purvam Pathatiyas Tadam Dhritam Lajam Suradolitaram Tasya Hridaye Tadam Dhritam Lajam Suradolitaram Tasya Hridaye
Even with modern music, it's very nice. So that's our discussion for this evening about Nityananda. In summary, there was in Grand Rapids, they were observing Nityananda Trayodasi on the Dwadasi because it was Sunday. And one question arose, sounds like we really should be wanting to get the mercy of Lord Nityananda. So this Nityanandastakam is one way, and Lord Nityananda's lotus feet will be fixed in your heart. But we have practical activities we can do also. And when those feet of Lord Nityananda are situated in your heart, you will do something naturally, spontaneously, and that is assist Lord Nityananda in his service to Lord Chaitanya, reaching out to the persons covered by the darkness of ignorance. That's pretty much everybody, covered by the darkness of ignorance. They may not be sinful, abominable personalities like Jagai Madhai, but certainly covered by ignorance, as were we, or as are we, and extend the mercy of Lord Chaitanya on behalf of Lord Nityananda. Encourage them to chant the holy name. Encourage them to take the teachings of a life of devotion. And it's a challenge. You may not get hit in the head with a clay pot, but you may not get nice smiles and warm reception. But we do anyway because it's a service. It's assisting Lord Nityananda to get his mercy. Assisting Lord Nityananda to get his mercy. That's our lives. And this way, also, in the mood and the teachings of the Goswamis, will take shelter of them and their eternal associates of Krishna in the spiritual world, showing us in their lives how to live our lives, where glorification of Krishna is our life and soul. I mean, everything is there for us. We just have to reach out and stay in good association. Take the mercy, give the mercy. Nityananda Ram ki Jai. So I don't know what the timing is. It's my watch says it's 8:45. So I think should we take some questions or just let everybody run off and take prasadam? We're going to take some questions. If somebody wants to discuss some points, you can raise your hand.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much for very wonderful presentation. Two things, Maharaj. One, I wanted to know the artist information who draw the paintings. It was really beautifully, done. Do you know the name of the person who
The drawings,
Yeah, drawing.
I don't know. I know who I got them from, and that person who I got them from will know. But I don't know.
And the second one is the Gauradas Pandit's Gauravinda. Are they still the same deities?
Yes.
Historically, from 500 years back?
Yes, that's my understanding. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
There's other nice stories connected with them, but another time.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj. Maharaj, Nityananda, when Lord Balaram comes, we hear the pastime of how Lord Balaram kills Romapada Sutta with the crucifix, right?
Yes.
So I want to understand, I want to reconcile his, like when Duryodhan also misbehaves with Lord Krishna when he goes as Shantidhu. We don't see Lord Balaram treating him in that way when it is his own disciple, it is his disciple. I want to I'm confused to understand his nature, his act towards Romapada Sutta versus Duryodhan.
It's one of those inspired by Krishna puzzles. Because Duryodhana was a bad guy. He had dirty stuff in his heart towards Krishna and towards Krishna's dear devotees. But he against Krishna's devotees means against Krishna. And yet he had some partiality, some favoritism, looks like. Now, I've heard different discussions on this topic. And there's different views. So rather than ranging through the different views, the essence is, it has something to do with Krishna's inspiring him in that way. Because Balaram has nothing but Krishna's happiness. Now he has some appreciation. There's some virtue in with all that darkness. And he was devoted to Balaram. He was devoted to Balaram. And Balaram is very merciful. And he reciprocated with his devotion to him in different ways, teaching him fighting club and so forth. But he reciprocated with him. But it's not, he was blind to the darkness in his heart. He says he was inspired by Krishna to do what he did. That's how it reconciles for me. One of those Krishna mysteries.
Krishna. Thank you very much, Maharaj, for the class. Maharaj, is there a significance of large difference made about 12 years between Nityan and Gauranga?
What's the question? Is there a
Age
difference?
between Gauranga
12 years difference, is there any significance?
He's speaking. Go ahead.
Is there any significance of that large age difference between Nityan and
A
Gauranga?
large age difference. I've never heard anybody ask that question. Rational thinking can come up with a possible answer. I don't know anything authoritative from our acharyas or scripture. Why? It has something to do with the sequence of Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. That is, Lord Chaitanya left this world when he was younger. Lord Nityananda stayed for some time, but when Lord Nityananda became married, it's just part of the orchestration of Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. Then Virabhadra as his son, and then Janava doing what Janava did after his departure. Ostensibly, it's the flow of his Leela, and it just fit into the flow of his Leela. Now there may very well be some Gaudiya acharyas that have commented on this that I'm not aware of. And there's some deeper meaning that's kind of obvious. Does anybody in the room know the answer to that question from our acharyas commentaries? Okay, you have something? Okay, here's the microphone.
It was very inspiring when you mentioned we can receive mercy of God and the Prabhu by giving the holy name. And there's so many people out there who are eager to get the holy name. And personal question was like, when I heard yesterday, when I heard today, I feel like this is what I should be doing more and more. And then there's a tendency to be in a comfort zone and find my own services within the temple. So I can stay busy, I can stay Krishna conscious, but I'm okay, I'm trying to make advancement. But then there is that fire, but there is not a strong determination. This is what I must be doing, and that's what we must lies. And when we hear its beat, it strikes. How do I increase the determination and like really push forward? Because I want to like make advancement now.
My answer is everything depends. The answer to your question is Everything depends upon the quality of your daily chanting of japa. And the positive side, if you're very keen on chanting your japa in a way that will take you to the stage of offenseless chanting and love of God, then the question you're asking will not be a question. And if you're not striving like that, I mean, you don't have to, the bell doesn't have to ring that now you're a pure devotee or something, but if you're not striving like that, then everything starts to get a little mushy and fuzzy, you know, complacency becomes really easy. So the way to check complacency is pure chanting of the holy name, striving daily, diligently, that, you know, if the hill starts looking like a hill, then it starts looking like a mountain, and starts looking like a mission impossible. But because when you're really striving to become a senseless chanter and simply absorbed, there's in the chanting of the holy name, there's a nice verse by the saint Dhyana Goswami that is one verse about chanting. It's really nice. The mind absorbed in the holy name, the holy name absorbed in the mind. In this way, this is quality chanting. You know, try it. And when you get there, then the question you're raising disappears. And if you're not striving to achieve that, that question will be complacency is the name of the game. I mean, we're still devotees, but you know, come see, come on. Okay, I think we're ready to go for Prashad, right? What's the announcement? Who's the announcement maker? Prashad time. So tell everybody go to the Prashad.
Yes, no, that's it. Prashadam is getting stuff outside in to-go boxes. So please, we may have to make a queue. Also, everyone enjoyed the class? One more thing. Everyone enjoyed the class? Based on what we understand, Maharaj is doing a seminar on 6 Goswamis from 18th February to 21st February. And its website is